Welcome to Liberté, Egalité, Fraternité, and all that, a podcast about current affairs, foreign policy, politics, and governments behaving badly. Episode 6: The Thin-Skinned Chinese Dictatorship. A few years ago, people in the West were amused to learn that Chinese censors had banned Winnie the Pooh. What did the bear of very little brain do to run afoul of the gatekeepers of the Great Firewall of China? Well, actually nothing. The culprit was actually China's bloggers. Around 2013, they noticed a picture of Chinese President Xi Jinping walking alongside then US President Barack Obama. And some bright mind was struck by the contrast between the lean and fit American president and his shorter, portlier Chinese counterpart. And naturally, he then compared it to a picture of Tigger and the portly Winnie the Pooh walking alongside each other. And from there, the comparison caught fire. When Xi Jinping and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe were caught in an awkward handshake, netizens responded with Winnie the Pooh and Eeyore shaking hands. And on it continued. A picture of Xi popping his head out of his limousine was compared to a toy of Winnie the Pooh in a car. Now, a more secure leader would have laughed it off and maybe even embraced it and spun it around to raise his popularity. But Xi Jinping has a rather inflated opinion of himself. Thanks to some creative propaganda and an anti-corruption campaign that conveniently targeted his main political rivals, Xi is very popular in China. In 2017, the party Central Committee placed his rather banal Xi Jinping thought into the Chinese constitution, which equates him to Mao and Deng, two leaders who, whether you love them or hate them, actually enacted major change in China. And as the cult of personality grew, in 2018, China removed term limits for president, basically making Xi president for life. So, to compare the self-proclaimed larger-than-life figure to a fat cartoon bear is a grievous insult. And down came the censors. In 2018, Christopher Robin was also denied a Chinese release. Pooh's name has also been censored from video games, though Pooh-themed rides survive in Disneyland Shanghai. In October 2019, Pooh was featured in the South Park episode Banned in China, which resulted in South Park being banned in China. Of course, being unaware of the Streisand effect, where when you make people aware something upsets you, you raise awareness of the fact in a counterproductive manner, Chinese censors have merely spread awareness of the Xi-Pooh comparisons across the world. Now, it would be easy to laugh this off as the affectations of an insecure dictator. But the Chinese tendency to censor at perceived slights extends further. Last year, Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey had the temerity to tweet his support for protesters in Hong Kong. China threw an epic tantrum that put 2-year-old toddlers and Donald Trump to shame. From demanding Morey be fired, to banning the Rockets, to threatening to ban the NBA, ultimately the tantrums backfired. While superstars like LeBron James, always eager to speak up on civil rights in the United States, got deserved criticism on how quickly they kowtowed to China to save their endorsement deals, ultimately the NBA refused to fire or censure Morey, and the tantrum created a backlash in the United States, and questions about how eager corporate America, notably Hollywood, bows down to Chinese demands. The other problem when a dictatorship is allergic to criticism of any kind is that it becomes difficult to solve critical problems before they blow up. When the coronavirus outbreak started in Wuhan and Dr. Li Wenliang raised the alarm, local officials accused him of making false comments that had severely disturbed the social order. And with the police cracking down on him, the ability to nip the outbreak in the bud was lost. And tragically, Dr. Li himself later succumbed to the disease. The outrage in China was huge and some scapegoats will be found, but the underlying problem has not been fixed. In a country where government officials are above humor and immune from reproach. Problems will fester until they are too big to avoid. The world now faces a pandemic that could have been avoided, and even today, nobody really trusts the numbers coming out of the Chinese government. And yet, as Chinese countries started restricting travel, Chinese officials threw another tantrum, complaining about the restrictions and demanding that neighboring countries desist from such actions. The leftist government in South Korea decided not to restrict Chinese travel out of solidarity, and watched as the number of infected in his country exploded as the governor lost control of the coronavirus. And ironically, now certain provincial Chinese governments are banning South Koreans. And there's no talk of solidarity, which was used by the South Koreans in the first place. Authoritarian governments outside the West always have excuses about why they suppress free speech. And usually it comes down to some pablum about social order. The problem is that this is basically an excuse for dictators to entrench themselves in power, suppress any dissent, and pretend all is well with the world. Beneath the veil, problems fester and never get solved. Ever since the Tiananmen Square massacre, China has bribed its citizens into agreeing to reduce civil liberties in exchange for economic growth. And the Chinese censors have done an amazing job of erasing the Tiananmen Square massacre from the awareness of young Chinese citizens. But as economic growth slows, it'll be interesting to see how the regime adapts. As a sign of instability, many wealthy and upper middle class Chinese have one foot out of the door. Many hold passports in other countries like the UK, Australia, and the United States, where the rule of law does not depend on the whims of a touchy dictator. And even then, many like Liu Yifei, star of the upcoming Disney movie Mulan, who is a naturalized citizen and as a result enjoys the free speech her new American passport provides, endorse the Chinese government's crackdown in Hong Kong. Along with corporate America, which is all too eager to give up its values for the almighty dollar, actions like this allow the thin-skinned Chinese dictatorship to suppress speech and force its retrograde values on the world. This is a state of affairs that should not be allowed to continue. Free speech is important, humor is important, and no government official should be immune to that. And it's about time the thin-skinned Chinese dictatorship learned that lesson. That's it for today. So next time, we'll have a quick look at Super Tuesday in Joe Biden's miraculous night. See you soon.